How does a phone become a chemical spy? Where did a billion-dollar airport just vanish? And how a simple vegetable once fooled prison guards. Stay with me, because these are just 3 of the insane true facts you're about to hear. And trust me, it only gets crazier from here. 200. The name Kennedy might sound presidential, but in Gaelic it means ugly head. Yep. America's most glamorous political family carries a name straight out of a roast session. Don Gorski holds the world record for eating Big Macs, over 28,788 and counting. He's been munching on them almost every day since 1972, missing only 8 days in over 50 years. Even McDonald's couldn't believe it. Oscar Peyrou is a respected film critic in Spain who doesn't watch films. Instead, he reviews movies based only on their posters. Visual vibes over actual plots. Bold move. Want to see what $1 million gets you? In Monaco, it buys just 16 square meters, about the size of a small bedroom. In Hong Kong, you get 22 square meters, and in New York, a spacious 25 square meters. Luxury has no room for space. Alexander the Great's warriors wore armor made of layered linen called linothorax. It was lightweight, flexible, and strong enough to stop arrows. Turns out, ancient Greek fashion was also battlefield ready. 195. The world's largest cuckoo clock lives in Germany, and its bird weighs over 330 pounds. That's not a cuckoo, that's a feathered tank. Before she became First Lady, Melania Trump received a U.S. Genius Visa, typically reserved for Nobel Prize winners and top scientists. Her extraordinary ability? Modeling. In Bolivia, people use llama dung to purify drinking water. It's rich in carbon and filters out heavy metals, proof that poop can save lives. The phrase pipe dream comes from the trippy hallucinations people had while smoking opium in the 1800s. So next time someone says your idea is a pipe dream, they might be comparing it to a drug-fueled fantasy. Every day, the U.S. Federal Reserve shreds over 4 tons of old dollar bills, and then they turn it into compost for gardens. Your money really does grow on trees, eventually. 190. Chicago is home to more than 60 radio-collared coyotes. They're tracked by researchers, and they love eating rats and voles. Nature's own pest control, right in the city. Lin Qinglan, a deaf dancer from Taiwan, doesn't hear music. She feels it through the floor. Using vibration and rhythm, she choreographs performances that move entire audiences, literally and emotionally. The first manager of the first ever McDonald's franchise was named Ed McLucky. With a name like that, success was practically served with fries. In some countries, buying a gun can take months of background checks and approvals. In parts of the US, you can walk into a store and leave with a gun in under an hour, faster than buying a couch. The label genuine leather sounds fancy, but it's actually a low-grade quality. It's real leather, just second worst on the scale. Marketing wins. Your wallet doesn't. An unpeeled orange floats effortlessly on water, but once you peel it, it sinks like a rock. Why? That spongy skin is full of air pockets, nature's own life jacket. In South Africa, white people own 72% of the farmland, yet make up only 8% of the population. A legacy of colonization and apartheid that still shapes the land and the debate. Nearly 2/3 of Americans can't pass a basic test in financial literacy. Questions like, what's compound interest? How does inflation work? It's not just a quiz, it's the cost of not knowing. Male layer chicks are doomed from the start. They can't lay eggs and don't grow enough meat. So egg producers kill them within hours of hatching. Billions. Every year. A brutal truth hidden behind your morning omelet. On average, Japanese people sleep 2 hours less per night than the Chinese. Blame the work culture, long commutes, and high stress. In Japan, rest isn't a right. It's a rare luxury. 180. Couples who see their spouse as their best friend report twice the life satisfaction compared to others. Turns out, marrying your BFF may be the ultimate cheat code to happiness. The US once had a half-cent coin, discontinued in 1857 for being worthless. But back then, it could still buy you a loaf of bread or a newspaper. Today, it'd be worth about a modern dime. Alcatraz inmates were given hot showers, not out of kindness, but strategy. If they got used to cold water, they might have braved the icy bay and escaped. Warm comfort, cold logic. Las Vegas Airport has a bin just outside the terminal where travelers can ditch drugs before flying. No questions asked. It's called the amnesty box. Perfect for when you realize your carry-on is a felony. Brain scans show that extroverts process sensory information more intensely than introverts. Loud music, social scenes, bright lights, they crave stimulation. Introverts, they prefer peace over party mode. 175. In Iceland, if someone says, "I'll find you on a beach," it's not an invitation. It's a threat. It means, "I'll get revenge." Cold country, colder warnings. Butterflies have only been around for 56 million years. But 85 million years ago, another insect looked and behaved almost identically. It had no relation, just a perfect case of evolutionary mimicry. Potato aphids are very weather sensitive. If they sense a drop in air pressure, often before a storm, they refuse to have sex. Even bugs know when it's not the right mood. In 2012, a party boat in Texas capsized after all 60 people rushed to one side to see a nude beach. No one died, but dignity, that might have drowned. The only difference between fog and mist, visibility. If you can't see past 100 meters, it's fog. More than that, mist. Same vibe, just a clearer outlook. 170. Before 1868, eating meat from four-legged animals was banned in Japan for over 1,000 years. Buddhist beliefs and imperial edicts made beef a crime against the soul and your dinner plate. The Japanese company Toto, famous for luxury toilets, once built a motorcycle that runs on poop. Literally. It's called the Toilet Bike Neo. Saves fuel, but you might lose friends. In 2014, an Italian nurse was accused of murdering 38 patients because she thought they were annoying. When asked, her co-workers said she didn't like sick people. The mayor of Bogota, Colombia, once hired 420 mimes to mock bad drivers and jaywalkers. His theory? Colombians fear public humiliation more than traffic fines. And it worked. Every year, around 13.9 million Americans call in sick or show up late, the day after the Super Bowl. It's unofficially known as National Hangover Monday. 165. The Nazis forcibly sterilized around 400,000 Germans they labeled as unfit or life unworthy of life. A chilling reminder that not all atrocities wore uniforms. Nollywood, Nigeria's film industry, is the second largest in the world by volume, churning out over 2,500 movies a year. Only Bollywood makes more. Hollywood, a distant third. A study found that 99% of people who join multi-level marketing, MLM schemes, lose money. The dream of getting rich from home? Mostly a pyramid made of broken wallets. After a mass shooting in 1996, Australia passed some of the world's strictest gun laws. Since then, 0 mass shootings, gun reform that actually worked. Between 1935 and 1976, Sweden sterilized over 63,000 people, mostly women, under a eugenics law meant to ensure racial purity. Yes, Sweden. 160. To test soil health, farmers are encouraged to bury cotton underwear for 2 months. In good soil, microbes eat it. In bad soil, your undies come out fresh. When you snap your fingers, your fingertip moves at nearly 20 miles per hour. Faster than a car in city traffic, but a lot more satisfying. In 18th century Scotland, medical students could pay their tuition in corpses. No scholarships, just grave robbing and cadavers. Canned food was invented in 1810. But guess what? The can opener wasn't invented until nearly 50 years later. People used chisels and hammers to eat dinner. A church in Italy, destroyed by an earthquake in 1976, was rebuilt stone by stone using its original pieces, each catalogued and returned to its exact spot. A divine jigsaw puzzle. 155. In ancient Greece, married women were banned from watching the Olympic Games. If caught sneaking in, the penalty was death. Who knew sports could be a matter of life and wife? The winner of the first modern Olympic marathon in 1896 stopped mid-race for a glass of wine at a tavern and still won. That's not hydration, that's motivation. Ever gone shopping while hungry and bought things you didn't need? Turns out, hunger doesn't just boost food purchases, it makes you buy anything. Even socks look tastier on an empty stomach. The Netherlands is tiny and densely populated, yet it's the second largest exporter of food in the world, just behind the US. Call it farming wizardry with a Dutch twist. Junk mail in the US destroys around 100 million trees every year. That's like chopping down Rocky Mountain National Park every 4 months, all for mail no one wants to open. 150. If a mom is feeling depressed, her baby might be too. Even at just 18 months old, their cells can show signs of increased stress. Emotion is contagious, even at the molecular level. Cheese triggers the same brain receptors as hard drugs, according to researchers. Craving cheddar? You might be in deeper than you think. The term swan song comes from the ancient belief that swans are silent their whole lives, until they sing one haunting, beautiful song just before they die. Poetic, and probably untrue, but still haunting. Just one short workout can give your brain a boost. It improves decision-making, focus, and executive function. No need for hours in the gym. Even a quick sweat sharpens the mind. In 2017, the world's billionaires made enough money to end extreme poverty 7 times over. Let that sink in. Then imagine what they did with it instead. 145. Only 41% of tasks on a to-do list ever get done. So when you check one off, you're officially beating the odds. There's enough water in Lake Superior to cover the entire landmass of North and South America with 30 centimeters of water. That's one enormous icy bathtub. Stifling a sneeze by closing your nose and mouth might seem polite, but it can rupture your throat. Let it out, seriously. A sophomaniac is someone who believes they're extremely intelligent, even when they're not. You probably know at least one. A man tattooed Netflix on his body and tweeted it. Netflix gave him a free year of service. No word yet on whether he added HBO next. 140. About 62% of dating app users are men. Only 38% are women, which means for every swipe right, there's a whole crowd waiting behind that profile pic. In 2017, a 10-year-old boy in China collected over 160,000 plastic bottles in 2 years. He raised $2,700 and donated every cent to AIDS orphans. Heroism doesn't need age, just purpose. Czech warlord Jan Žižka had one final request after death. Turn my skin into a war drum. And so they did. His army literally marched to the beat of his body. Modern homing pigeons are choosing convenience over instinct. They now follow highways and turn at junctions, using human roads instead of magnetic fields. Even birds love GPS. Cacao plants, the source of chocolate, could vanish by 2050 due to rising heat and drought. The climate crisis just hit your sweet tooth. 135. In 1975, the Banqiao Dam collapsed in China, killing over 171,000 people. The disaster was covered up for decades, only revealed in 2005, one of history's deadliest secrets. To use the HDMI logo, manufacturers pay $10,000 a year, plus a royalty per cable. Skip the logo, and it's 15 cents per cable. Use the logo, just 5 cents. Now you know why your cable cost $30. In France, publishing photos of a handcuffed suspect is illegal, because in their eyes, you're innocent until proven guilty, visually. Finland is the only developed country where fathers spend more time with their primary school-aged kids than mothers. Turns out, dad jokes come with actual FaceTime. In 2017, a Texas wedding photographer won $1 million in court after a couple falsely smeared her online over a $125 surprise fee. Expensive rage tweet, huh? 130, trauma victims who don't try to find meaning in what happened to them are often the ones who recover best years later. Sometimes not having answers is healing. Just minutes in the New York subway system daily can lead to hearing loss over time. Screeching brakes, steel wheels, the city's music comes at a cost. Over 3/4 of US workers use social media at work, even if company rules say otherwise. The boss might block Facebook, but Slack can't stop scrolling. A study found that men expressing anger tend to gain influence in group settings. Women doing the same often lose it. Same emotion, different price. Neuroscientist James Fallon was researching psychopathic brain patterns when he found one that matched perfectly, his own. Turns out studying monsters can get personal. If you're enjoying this, please consider subscribing for more fascinating facts. A single week of the New York Times holds more information than a 17th century person saw in their entire lifetime. Back then, a lifetime meant whispers, sermons, and rumors. Today, one Sunday paper equals brain overload. We don't read the news, we drown in it. According to studies, adults spend more time each morning checking emails and scrolling the internet than they do eating breakfast. We're literally feeding our phones before ourselves. During World War I, over 1,000 double-decker London buses, complete with drivers and mechanics, were sent to the battlefront, from carrying passengers to carrying soldiers. Out of 56 million abortions performed each year worldwide, around 45% are unsafe, according to WHO standards. That's nearly 25 million lives at risk, not by choice, but by circumstance. In the Industrial Revolution, a 10 to 16-hour workday was the norm. Then came Ford. They introduced the 8-hour day, and guess what? Productivity skyrocketed. Work less, do more. The longest cricket test match ever played lasted 12 days, between England and South Africa in 1939. It was finally abandoned, because the England team was about to miss the boat home. Ever wondered why church bells ring at noon in Europe? It started in 1456 as a mass call to pray for the defenders of Belgrade. Today, most just think it's lunchtime. William Shatner sold his kidney stone for $25,000. The money went to build a house for Habitat for Humanity. Captain Kirk, boldly donating where no man has donated before. The tiny island nation of Kiribati is the only country in all 4 hemispheres, north, south, east, and west. A global address, literally. Drivers in New York City spend an average of 107 hours per year searching for parking. That's more than 4 full days of your life, lost in traffic loops and frustration. The CEO of Ryanair once wanted to charge £1 to use the toilet on flights. It was blocked by EU regulations, and possibly human decency. In 1939, President Roosevelt moved Thanksgiving up by a week, just to extend the holiday shopping season. Even back then, it was all about the sales. Your smartphone is a chemical crime scene. Scientists can analyze it and detect your diet, medications, and even the shampoo you use, all from surface residue. Your phone knows everything. The largest knitted objects in the world. The floating Uros Islands in Peru, made from woven reeds. Strong enough to hold entire homes, people, and boats. Nature meets architecture. In medieval times, people wore the word abracadabra around their necks, written in a triangular shape, as an amulet to ward off deadly diseases. Magic or medicine? Maybe both? The Spanish flu didn't start in Spain. It likely began in the US or France, but during wartime, those countries censored the news. Spain? Neutral and honest, so it got blamed for a pandemic it didn't cause. While prisoners suffered in Auschwitz and Dachau, the Nazis kept rabbits in luxury pens nearby. They were bred for their Angora wool, used to keep German troops warm. Even animals had it better than humans. Since 1950, anyone trying to sell an Oscar must first offer it to the Academy for just $1. The statue is yours, but only kind of. Hollywood gold comes with legal strings. In 2017, scientists sent a message to a star system 12.4 light-years away, hoping to reach alien life. If they reply, we'll hear back in 2042. Mark your calendar for first contact. The brightest objects in the universe aren't stars, they're quasars. Some shine 429 trillion times brighter than our sun. They're powered by supermassive black holes, literally darkness creating light. There's a place in the Pacific called Million Dollar Point, where the US Army dumped tons of equipment after World War II. Trucks, tanks, bulldozers, all at the bottom of the sea. Why? Cheaper than bringing it home. In 1987, Pat Nixon, wife of former President Richard Nixon, told people she believed Donald Trump would one day become president, if he ever ran. A prophecy no one expected. In 2013, police in the Maldives detained a coconut on suspicion of vote rigging during a key election. Locals feared it had been cursed with black magic. Democracy meets dark arts. The Philippines has over 7,600 islands. If you visited one island per day, it would take you nearly 21 years to see them all. Vacation goals unlocked. In the depths of the Amazon, there are still around 60 tribes that live uncontacted or in voluntary isolation. No phones, no internet, just the forest, their traditions, and a silent stand against the modern world. Norwegian scientists are collecting milk teeth from 100,000 children, hoping to trace connections between chemical exposure in the womb and diseases later in life. Tiny teeth holding massive secrets. Terry Davis, a brilliant programmer with schizophrenia, spent 10 years coding an operating system to talk to God. He called it Temple OS, a digital altar for divine communication. As a prank, Steve Wozniak, yes, the Apple co-founder, once planted a fake bomb in a school locker. He landed in juvie, and while there, taught inmates how to rig the ceiling fan wires to shock the bars. A future tech genius. Starting early. In 2015, two scammers sold a fake Goya painting for 1.5 million euros. But karma hit fast. The payment was fake too. Counterfeit meets counterfeit. A simple solution, backed by science. Sending text messages to parents about their child's schoolwork can significantly boost academic performance. Turns out, nagging works better via SMS. Ever wonder why barns are red? Because red paint is cheap. It's cheap because iron is common, and iron is common because it's the last element made when a star dies. So yes, barns are red because of exploding stars. In the Middle Ages, Christians were banned from charging interest. Jews weren't. That's how many Jews ended up in finance, and how harmful stereotypes about money and scheming were born. Canada passed the Apology Act in 2009. Saying sorry after an incident can no longer be used in court as an admission of guilt. Only in Canada is politeness legally protected. Instead of writing a check, Toyota helped New York's food bank by streamlining operations. They cut wait times from 90 minutes to just 18. Efficiency is the best charity. You recall more memories from your teens and 20s than any other time in life. It's called the reminiscence bump, because the most defining stories are written when life is loudest. John Dillinger, America's infamous gangster, once escaped prison using a potato shaped like a pistol. He pointed it, bluffed, and walked right out. Criminal creativity at its weirdest. In 2014, the International Space Station had to dodge space junk 3 times. each chunk moving at 17,000 miles per hour. In space, even litter is lethal. The Mayans drilled holes in their teeth to insert semi-precious stones. Not for function, for beauty. Imagine getting emeralds for braces. In the 18th century, most people only bathed properly twice a year. Twice. A year. Perfume wasn't just fashion, it was survival. Today's airlines fly 10% slower than they did in the 1960s. Why? To save fuel. Turns out, slower is smarter when you're burning jet fuel by the second. In 1940, about 75% of Americans dreamt in black and white. Today, just 12%. Color TV didn't just change entertainment, it changed our dreams. China has around 459 cancer villages, small communities near polluting factories where cancer rates have exploded. Toxic profits paid in human lives. Want better self-control? Try using your non-dominant hand for tasks like eating or opening doors for 2 weeks. It trains your brain to resist impulses, one awkward spoonful at a time. When Samuel Morse discovered his wife had died, days before he even knew she was ill, he was devastated. That heartbreak led him to invent the telegraph and Morse code. From loss came connection. In 2012, a Swedish man survived 2 months trapped in a snowed-over car. He ate nothing but snow, saved by what scientists call the igloo effect. Cold nearly killed him, and also kept him alive. Every year, 100,000 Japanese people disappear without a trace, often to escape shame after divorce, failure, or debt. It's known as juhatsu, the art of vanishing. Even sharks have rush hour. A study found that shark traffic near Palmyra Atoll peaks between 7 and 8 p.m. Apparently, they commute too, just bloodier. In Hollywood, prop money must be one-sided and sized less than 75% or more than 150% of a real bill. Too realistic, and it becomes a felony. Half of all academic papers are never read by anyone, except the author, the peer reviewer, and the editor. Billions of words, lost in silence. The British Library stores over 60 million newspapers in low oxygen rooms so they can't catch fire. Because when history burns, it's gone for good. All Quiet on the Western Front was banned in Poland for being pro-German, and in Germany for being anti-German. One story, two enemies. The Japanese embassy in France runs a 24/7 helpline for tourists suffering from Paris syndrome, a culture shock so intense it causes panic attacks. Sometimes the dream city isn't so dreamy. The longest lightning bolt ever recorded stretched farther than most flights, over 700 kilometers, enough to go from Brussels to London. Russia has around 800,000 faith healers and only 640,000 doctors. In some towns, magic is more available than medicine. To visit every child on Earth in one night, Santa Claus would have to travel at 3,000 times the speed of sound. So, either he bends time, or we've got some explaining to do. Spiders consume twice as much animal prey every year as all humans combined. Yes, that tiny 8-legged thing, a full-time predator. Some traffic lights in Japan are blue, not green. Why? Historically, green and blue were the same word in Japanese. Language shaped infrastructure. Men who use cocaine before having children are more likely to have sons who struggle with memory formation. Addiction leaves marks, even before birth. Stephen King didn't read his kids bedtime stories. He made them tell him stories. Plot twist: that's how you raise novelists. Or nightmares. The Palace of Parliament in Romania is the world's largest administrative building. Its lighting and heating bill alone exceeds $6 million a year, the same as powering a small city. The average Australian cat eats more fish per year than the average Australian. Who's the pet now? According to a study, being a waiter is more stressful than being a neurosurgeon. Why? Less control, more pressure, and no applause at the end. To fight gender bias, many orchestras conduct blind auditions. Musicians play behind a screen, so judges hear skill, not see stereotypes. Spain once built an airport for 1 billion euros and then abandoned it. When it went to auction in 2015, the only bid was 10,000 euros. That's not a deal. That's a punchline. There's a real museum of broken relationships in Croatia. People donate objects from failed relationships, each with a short story. Heartbreak, archived. A report found that 3 out of 4 illiterate adults failed parts of a vision screening. Turns out, poor eyesight and illiteracy are deeply linked. Sometimes, people can't read simply because they can't see. In 2012, Google bought Motorola for $12.5 billion and sold it 2 years later for just $2.9 billion. That's a $9.6 billion loss. Even tech giants can trip. Struggling to sleep? Try a weighted blanket. Studies show it helps reduce insomnia and anxiety by triggering a deep pressure sensation that calms the nervous system, like a full-body hug. You don't need a gym. A study showed that vacuuming, scrubbing floors, or walking to work gives your heart the same protection as exercise. Turns out, cleaning can be cardio. If you're an artist or scientist, your biggest breakthrough might not come in your 20s. According to a study, most major creative leaps happen in your late 30s. Genius, aged to perfection. In Belgium, prisoners have personal computer stations in their cells with limited internet and pay-per-view films, even adult ones. Officials say it makes prisons run more efficiently. Rehabilitation with a remote. Babies have accents. French newborns cry with a rising tone, while German babies cry with a falling one. They pick it up in the womb, just by hearing their mother's speech patterns. In 1637, during the Dutch tulip mania, 1 tulip bulb sold for more than 10 times a skilled worker's annual income. It was the world's first recorded economic bubble, and yes, it popped hard. To know how far lightning struck, count the seconds between the flash and the thunder, then divide by 5. That's how many miles away it hit. Science you can hear. Before becoming Canada's Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau worked as a bouncer, a snowboard instructor, and a high school teacher. Not exactly the traditional path to world politics. If you like what you see, please subscribe. After World War I, German pharmaceutical company Bayer was forced to give up the aspirin and heroin trademarks under the Treaty of Versailles. Imagine losing rights to 2 of the most iconic drugs in history. There's a movie called 100 Years, written by Robert Rodriguez and starring John Malkovich, that won't be released until 2115. The tagline, "The movie you'll never see." For mice, the smell of a man is as stressful as a 3-minute forced swim. Women, no stress. So yes, male scent equals biological panic. Never shower or wash dishes during a lightning storm. Lightning can travel through pipes, and strikes from miles away can shock you in your own bathroom. In Pyongyang Zoo, one of the star attractions is a chimpanzee that smokes a pack a day. Officials say he doesn't inhale, but he does light up and draw a crowd. No marathon runner has ever died from dehydration, but plenty have died from drinking too much water, a condition called water intoxication. It's not the thirst that kills, it's the flood. In 2016, a record $4.79 billion was spent on 14,591 soccer player deals worldwide. That averages out to about $328,000 per player. For that price, you'd expect more goals and fewer dives. In 1992, a group of French teenagers scrubbing graffiti off a cave wall accidentally erased a 15,000-year-old painting of a bison. In trying to clean history, they erased it. Did you know just a few teaspoons of Botox could kill everyone in the UK? A few kilos? Enough to wipe out all of humanity. It's the most toxic substance on Earth, and we inject it into our faces. Saltwater crocodiles have a hobby. They surf. They catch ocean currents and can travel hundreds of kilometers by riding waves. No board needed. In 1986, a Soviet pilot bet his co-pilot he could land using instruments only, No visuals. He crashed the plane. 70 people died. The cost of ego, fatal. According to the UN, 42% of remote workers suffer from insomnia, compared to 29% of office workers. Working from home sounds nice, until the bed becomes the office. Earl Wild was the first person to ever play piano on US television. And 58 years later, the first to live stream a performance on the internet. A true pioneer, twice. At the 1932 Olympics, the 3,000-meter steeplechase was run over 3,460 meters. Why? An official lost count of the laps. Even the Olympics forgets the assignment sometimes. A coal power plant emits 100 times more radiation into the air than a nuclear power plant of equal size. The dirtier fuel is also sneakily radioactive. Unborn babies can taste what their mothers eat, and even develop a preference before birth. Your baby may already love garlic bread. The rubber tree isn't the only plant that produces latex, but it's the only one that makes more latex the more you cut it. Pain makes it stronger. Charging your smartphone for an entire year costs less than $1 in electricity. The real cost? Your screen time. Most people think of mental illness as rare, but a New Zealand study found that only 17% of people aged 11 to 38 showed no signs of mental disorders. That means over 8 in 10 experienced something. Mental health struggles? They're more common than silence makes them seem. The smell of watermelon is notoriously hard to fake. Why? Its sweet scent comes from aldehydes, which break down fast in air. Nature's perfume doesn't bottle well. Hunter-gatherers had way more free time than modern people, and even more than farmers. Turns out, chasing dinner was less stressful than chasing deadlines. A microwave oven uses more electricity keeping its digital clock glowing than it does heating food. So yes, your microwave burns more power telling time than cooking noodles. Warrior ants don't leave their wounded behind. They carry injured comrades back to the nest for recovery. Even insects have battlefield loyalty. Greek philosopher Heraclitus tried to cure illness by lying in the sun covered in cow dung. He died the next day. Not all ancient wisdom aged well. Ancient Greeks believed beans contained the souls of the dead, so they avoided eating them, not for taste, but for fear of spiritual cannibalism. Think you were bitten by a spider? 96% of people seeking treatment for spider bites don't actually have them, according to a US study. Spiders get blamed for a lot they never did. Men are often attracted to kind, warm women, but women? A study found they're not more drawn to nice men, at least not on first impression. Nice guys might not finish last, but they don't always start first. In 1956, a scientist brought African honeybees to South America. Some escaped and crossbred with European bees, creating the killer bee. Deadly and fast, all thanks to a bee experiment gone rogue. At Ground Zero in Hiroshima, temperatures reached 540,000 degrees Fahrenheit. That's about 300 times hotter than a cremation furnace. In human heat, unimaginable destruction. Hugging someone you love triggers a hormone called oxytocin. It lowers stress, eases anxiety, drops blood pressure, and can even boost memory. One hug, a lot of healing. An elephant's skin can be over an inch thick, but it's so sensitive, they can feel a fly land on it. Strength and sensitivity, perfectly combined. Sleep-deprived fruit flies and fish do what we do. They try to catch up on rest the next day. Turns out, sleep debt is a cross-species problem. As of 2016, Beijing was the world's most expensive city for renters. Average rent cost 1.2 times the average salary. That's more than a home. That's financial quicksand. Having no close friends might be as deadly as smoking, according to a Harvard study. Loneliness boosts blood-clotting proteins that raise your risk of heart attacks and stroke. Social connection isn't just healthy, it's life-saving. The measles virus doesn't just make you sick, it erases your immune system's memory, leaving you vulnerable to other infections for up to 3 years. One illness. That clears out your defenses. Under Islamic law, money can't just sit and make more money through interest. Banks operate on a profit-loss model, sharing investment risk with clients instead. It's finance, with ethics at the center. That chill you get during an emotional song or scene. It's called frisson. It's the goosebumps plus emotional overload combo. And your brain's way of saying, this moment is powerful. Swallowed chewing gum doesn't stay in your body for 7 years. That's a myth. It passes through your system just like everything else, usually in a day or two. In the US, homeopathy products must carry a warning label that says they don't work, because sugar pills with bold claims need small print truth. The term checkmate comes from the Persian phrase shahmat. It means the king is dead. Chess, where strategy ends in silence. In 2012, someone tried to set the Guinness record for the world's most expensive cocktail. Then a customer accidentally dropped the $77,500 bottle of cognac. One sip away from history, shattered. Ever notice how drug ads use two voices? The confident, upbeat one sells the benefits. The calm, slow one lists the side effects, like internal bleeding. It's persuasion, split in stereo. Your friends likely have more friends than you do. That's called the friendship paradox. It's not personal, it's just math. And a little social pain. If you had an insect of the month calendar, you wouldn't run out of species for 80,000 years. Yes, Earth is crawling with variety. In 2013, 6 million pounds of maple syrup were stolen from Canada's Strategic Maple Syrup Reserve. Value? Over $18 million. The Great Canadian Syrup Heist. Every day, 36 kids in the US land in the ER because of cotton buds. They're for makeup, not ear canals. Babies who aren't crawling by 9 months are more likely to face learning and behavioral challenges later on. Mobility might be tied to brain development more than we thought. Want to motivate your team? Pizza and compliments work better than cash, according to a study. Appreciation lasts longer than a bonus. Early golf rules were savage. If your ball hit your opponent, they didn't just get a bruise, they lost the hole. Forget sportsmanship. Aim for the win, literally. In the 1990s, Cuba couldn't afford pesticides, so the country went all in on organic farming. Now, organic honey is Cuba's fourth biggest agricultural export. Necessity turned into nature's sweet reward. That's all for today. Subscribe to our channel for more fun videos.